Your microphones, folks. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made posting on the bulletin board, town hall, and mailing to the officially designated newspapers. A list of the meeting dates annually indicating this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on March 4th, 2024.
Joseph Caulfield.
Here.
Chandra Harjani.
Here.
Amy Lawrence.
Here.
Gary Rosen.
Here.
Regina Truitt.
Here.
Zhojang Peng.
Here.
Vice Chair Jessica Glatt.
Here.
Chair Frank Clinton.
Here. We started off this evening with approval of minutes of 1/8/24. Any corrections or changes to those as they were circulated? Who's eligible? Is
Joseph, Chandra, Amy, Gary, Regina, Zhojang, Jessica, Craig.
all right. Can I have a motion on that set of minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of 1/8/24.
And a second?
I can second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Next, we'll move on to our memorializations, starting with calendar 39/18/23, Gagnow at 20 Claremont Drive in Short Hills. Any corrections or changes? Who's eligible?
This is 20 Claremont.
This 20 Claremont here.
Who is eligible? Joseph, Gary, Regina, Jessica, Craig.
Would someone like to make a motion on that memorialization?
Motion to approve the memorialization for calendar number 39/18/23.
Great, in a second.
Second.
Joseph Caulfield,
Yes.
Gary Rosen,
Yes.
Regina Truitt,
Yes.
Jessica Glatt.
Yes.
Frank Clinton.
Yes, next we have calendar 39/52/23, Narayan and Ara Hegde, 99 Sagamore Road in Millburn. Do I have any corrections or changes on that memorialization? Then who's eligible? Same group?
Eligible are Joseph, Chandra, Gary, Regina, Jessica, Craig.
Someone like to make a motion on that memorialization?
Move approval.
A second?
Second.
Joseph Caulfield,
Yes.
Chandra Harjani,
Yes.
Gary Rosen,
Yes.
Regina Truitt,
Yes.
Jessica Glatt.
Yes.
Frank Clinton.
Yes. Lastly, we have calendar 39/62/23, Charles and Margot Mullins at 17 Windermere Terrace. Who do we have?
Joseph, Chandra, Gary, Zhojang, Jessica, Craig are eligible.
If there are any corrections or changes, can I have a motion on calendar 39/62/23?
Motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Joseph Caulfield,
Yes.
Chandra Harjani,
Yes.
Gary Rosen,
Yes.
Zhojang Peng,
Yes.
Jessica Glatt.
Yes.
Frank Clinton.
Yes. We'll be starting this evening with calendar 39/58/23 at 150 Main Street. Leonard Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Anthony Sorsillo. I'm with the law offices of Levitt and Sorsillo in Millburn. On behalf of Dr. Leonard and Sandra Strulowitz, the subject property is 150 Main Street. It's situated in the residential R8 zone. Dr. Leonard Strulowitz and his wife Sandra have owned the subject property for approximately 50 years. And the property was developed for Dr. Strulowitz's practice of optometry, where he practiced for approximately 30 years. The Strulowitz's son, Daniel, occupies the first floor. He has a mail order business for contact lenses. His business operates from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday. He has one full-time employee and one part-time employee. The part-time employee either walks to and from work or is driven to and from work by her husband. Dan works Monday to Thursday. Dan or his full-time employee actually carry the contact lenses to the Federal Express drop box on Essex Street. There are no walk-in customers, and Dan's business has no sign. The last occupant of the second floor was Learning RX. I believe some members were around back then. That was a 7 days a week brain training exercise center for people aged 5 to 90. Sessions were by appointment only. The center's heaviest usage was after school was dismissed and students had appointments at the center. Learning RX vacated circa August 2020 during COVID. The second floor has been vacant ever since. On behalf of Dr. Leonard and Sandra Strulowitz, we represent this application for Dharma Chakra Buddhist Center. The proposed use is for meditating, teaching meditation techniques, and providing Buddhist classes. The center is run by volunteers. As a result, the center's use occurs after business hours during the week and meditation or classes on weekends. I have two witnesses, Frank Hall, who is an architect, and he's also an attendant and at times a teacher at the center. I also have Richard Keller, who's both a civil engineer and a professional planner. Unless there's any questions of me, Mr. Chairman, I'll call my first witness,
Zoo.
Mr. Frank Hall.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in tonight's hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Your name for the record, spelling your name.
My name is Frank Hall, Hall,
Thank you.
architect for the applicant.
Please give the board the benefit of your educational and professional experiences in the field of architecture.
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Architecture from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, 1987. I've been licensed in the state of New Jersey since 1992. I've appeared before numerous planning and zoning boards throughout northern New Jersey over those past 30 or so years.
And your license is currently good.
And my license is currently in good standing, yes.
Great credentials are accepted by this board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall, please explain your plans to the board.
It's a good location.
Mr. Sisson, before we start,
Yes.
just a little bit of a heads up that because of your introduction, that Mr. Hall also is affiliated somewhat with the proposed tenant, correct? I just want to get clarity on that.
Yes, he is. He's a
So-
teacher there and an attendant.
So
He attends.
his testimony at this point is just going to be
Architecture.
That's what I want to get.
And
clarification
once
on.
that's concluded and there is no further questions of him as an architect, he will then be a fact witness.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
No, thank you.
Dharma Chakra Buddhist Center has actually was happy to find this location because Dharma Chakra had been searching for a new location since the remnants of Hurricane Ida flooded the center out of its previous location in the Milburn Mall. So this location is a little bit larger than what the center had previously. The idea is to occupy the second floor. This open area here would be the primary meditation space. One arrives by stairs here to a reception and bookstore area. There's the main meditation space is here. There's a little bit of a kitchenette over here and some various other ancillary spaces such as an office, storage room, and so forth. There are no major renovations planned in order to occupy the space. The idea is that Dharma Chakra can actually occupy the space as it is, although once they're in there, the idea is possibly do a few minor modifications, such as removing a partition or two just to create better flow of space, but nothing that would substantially change the use of the space.
Continue with, the next plan.
The only modifications that are proposed at this time would be signage and some lighting at the exterior. Lighting on the side facing Ridgewood and on the side facing Main Street, all below the line of the second floor. Individual non-illuminated letters with some gooseneck lighting over it. Within the R8 zone, only 2 square feet of wall graphics is permitted. We have 725 square feet total on each side. Although to compare it to a zone where we would be a permitted use, I provided the percentage of coverage of the signable area for wall graphics. And that's a total of 8.7%, where 20% would be allowed in one of your business zones on the Ridgewood side, and 1.8%, where 20% would be allowed in one of your business zones on the Main Street side. Those are the only modifications to the building. Inside, at this point, the only thing that's proposed is we would carpet and paint and so forth. We're showing a total of 18 seats in the main meditation space. That's not an unrealistic number for a typical class. That would be actually generous for most of the classes. And I can talk more about the nature of the classes when I put my other hat on at the conclusion of this testimony.
I have no further questions on the rest.
Any questions for this professional from the board?
The lighting, would it be have like hours of illumination? The gooseneck lighting, is that anticipated being on all night?
If there are requirements to dim the lighting after a certain hour, I don't recall whether there's a 10 p.m. or midnight requirement within the zone or within the ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a permitted use in the R8 zone. So is there a proposal in terms of hours of operation for the lighting?
We wouldn't need the lighting after, say, 10 p.m. when people have all left the last class. The latest the class would run.
So just to 10 p.m.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Any other questions?
So this property is like change of use from before, right?
Well, it's also an educational use because primarily Dharma Chakra provides meditation classes in meditation and related spiritual views that are comport with meditation practice. And Learning RX was also an educational use, although for whatever reason it was classified in the resolution as general office. But I would characterize it myself as substantially similar.
So the follow-up question would be like, is there any impact on like probably the parking?
We have, although we do have a planner who will be testifying further on that.
So who is going to actually testify regarding the use of this facility? You are, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, that's my
that's
question.
right. Okay, then any other questions in capacity as architect?
Just a quick one, and again, if you're not in this capacity, then when you come back, your second capacity, how many people do you anticipate will be in the building at once?
That's a little bit more about, but
Is it-
well, I guess it's related to my architectural testimony as well. Evening classes, weekdays, generally maybe a half a dozen to a dozen students. And for any class, there would be a teacher and an assistant.
So maximum 14 people?
Approximately. Yeah, I mean, we don't,
We'll dig deeper into that. once we
Okay.
get-
and weekend classes, events that happen on maybe every other Saturday or once per month. Those might be anywhere from 15 to 25 people as an approximation.
You know, we'll curtail that for a minute, because Randy is sworn as an architect, so I don't want to get things too convoluted here. So anything else regarding architectural plans that have been submitted? I'll throw it back to you,
Okay.
and then decide how you want to go from here.
Mr. Hall, please tell the board the nature of the use of the Buddhist Center.
Sure. And I'm providing this information as a fairly long-term member of the center. About a dozen years. And as I said, the Dharma Chakra was over in the Milburn Mall for many years. I believe it's been in the area about 17 years, a bit before my time there. But the center exists to provide meditation classes. Everything, we really here to be here for the community. We exist to be here for the community. Everything from people who want to learn to meditate, to deal with a little stress, or to sleep better, through people wanting to engage a little bit more to deal with problems in their life. I've found as a teacher that very often when people come to the classes, they're dealing with something, relationship issues or work issues or health issues and the like. And so classes are offered that give people not only a chance to learn to meditate, but ways to develop beneficial lines of thought, ways of thinking to gain more patience, to have more patience with people, the world around them, to have more compassion for others. So we really believe that it serves as a benefit to the community. The nature of the classes are typically a meditation. Some of the classes have a teaching component. The meditations and the meditation techniques are offered in the Buddhist tradition, but it's not like anybody's expected or required to have any particular beliefs. We don't tell anybody what to believe or what they have to do. It is very much offered as a, take it as you wish.
So let's talk about overall operations, okay, since you're affiliated with this business.
Before,
Yeah, go ahead.
That's really, before Mr. Plattner asks your question, in terms of your affiliation, you say you're a teacher. Are you an employee? Are you just
No,
a
actually,
volunteer?
I should mention that the center is volunteer run. I'm an architect. I'm self-employed as an architect, and as a member of the center, I volunteer my time as a teacher. Other people volunteer to teach or volunteer to assist a teacher at a class. It's really a volunteer-run operation.
When you say you're a member of the center, what does that mean as a member?
I'm a monthly member. I mean, Dharma Chakra is supported by people who pay monthly dues to belong, as well as for class fees. We charge a nominal amount, typically $15 for a class, although our policy is nobody will be turned away for lack of funds. Because our primary mission, we don't exist to, we're not here to exist as a business per se, we're here to serve the community.
So maybe to go a little deeper into Ms. True's line of questioning, let's talk about average use here, okay? We have the area to meditate, we have the schooling. Take me through what an average day looks like.
Well, an average day, I should clarify that typically the space will be empty because most of the members are, they're all volunteers and most of them work. I'm at my office during the day. Other members are at their places of work during the day. So we're really only there in and around the time of a class. I mean, somebody might come in to do a little work in the office, somebody keeps the books, that sort of thing. But typically a little bit before a class, maybe a half hour, 20 minutes before a class, somebody would arrive, an assistant would arrive, the teacher would arrive, people would start to filter in. Say a typical evening class is generally 7 to 8:30 p.m. So around 6:30, somebody would show up, presumably after the owner's business at the first floor has closed. So about 6:30, people would start to come in. There's a class. People might stick around and talk a little bit after the class, which would end at, say, 7 to 8:30, so maybe about 9 o'clock, it's being locked up and everybody's going home. That would be a typical weeknight class. When we have a special event, the classes that might happen either every other Saturday or once a month, a little bit more attendance there. But none of this is like a typical house of worship where people come in very large numbers. Typically, it's members coming to a class that they come to on a regular basis, or people have already bought tickets on like Eventbrite, for instance, to attend the class. So we have a pretty good idea of how many people will be there for any given class.
Take me through the youth component.
The children's meditation class, if we do actually follow through with this, as we had thought about most recently, maybe taking down this partition and allowing this is more like a place for people to socialize between meditation sessions. But if we do hold a children's class, typically that would be for the children who come with the adults who are in the adult class. So it's the same set of cars.
How many members do you have?
Right now, I think we have about, maybe about 25 members at the moment. We had a bit more before Hurricane Ida flooded us out of the Milburn Mall.
So are you in signing capacity for this organization? Are you any type of executive?
No.
Okay, so.
So we have an administrative director, we have an educational program coordinator, and we have a couple of members who are on the board per se.
So I'm assuming there will be a lease, correct?
There is a lease.
Okay, we don't,
I was not involved in that transaction.
right,
but
okay,
There is a lease.
so are you familiar with the lease?
I'm familiar with it. I didn't negotiate it, our administrative director did, but I'm familiar with it.
So knowing there's a business in the first floor, okay, how many, maybe Rachel hit on this, but how many spots are you allocated in your lease?
There are 12 spaces total on the site. We are technically, the owner needs 2, which would leave 10 for us, although we would, being non-simultaneous hours of operation, the owner has told us that we're free to use all of those spaces outside of the hours when he's.
Right, but technically two are allocated towards the business on the
correct.
first floor. Okay, that's just.
And as our planner will discuss, we do have an additional parking arrangement offsite.
Yeah, I'm familiar. So, what's your busiest time? We're trying to, I mean, maybe for me, but I don't speak for anyone else, but trying to get a general idea of.
Busiest time would probably be one of these occasional Saturday events. As I said, maybe, well, we only have use of the offsite parking every other Saturday, so we would tend to schedule around that. But that would be our most, hopefully, our most active times. And those would be events that are maybe 10 to noon or so on a Saturday. And then maybe twice a year, there would be an event that's a little bit longer, like maybe 10 till mid-afternoon. But if we're lucky at that, we might get 25 or 30 people. But that's, once or twice a year.
Are there classes on Sundays as well? Or?
We do have a study program for members who are studying a little bit more rigorously. And currently, we have that on a Sunday. And that's right now 8:30 to 10:30 on a Sunday. We're using another offsite space at the moment.
Since you are in a very, I'm sorry. Since you are in a very residential area here, much more so than you were over in Vauxhall, what is your latest class? When will that end in the evening?
8:30.
8:30.
Currently 8:30.
Is a lot. That's what starts or when it finishes?
Finishes.
Doesn't finishes.
As I said, typically the evening classes on weekdays have been 7 to 8:30.
Any intention of making it later, adding a class after that?
Not to add a class after that. I don't know if at some point, I know we had a class up in Ridgewood that I taught for a number of years. That was like what we call a branch class. And that ran from 7:30 to 9 just because people had opined that once they got off the train, they needed a little bit more time. But the classes here in the Milburn area have been 7 to 8:30 for many years.
So do you anticipate, once you move into the new space, that you might get additional members once you're in the location, the sign's up?
Oh, we do hope to gain some additional members because we lost some members. sort of being homeless, it was not as invigorating to people, shall we say,
Well, that
to,
makes sense, and I guess that does raise the question though about what the ultimate need will be for parking.
Right.
And you can't know that today, but.
well, we can't know that today, but we do have the track history of being in the Milburn Mall for about 15 years. And over there, the classes were similar, classes that maybe today are 12 or 15, maybe they were 20 then.
Do a lot of couples come, or is it usually?
Yes, actually, there are both within the membership attendance at classes, as well as people who come, at the evening weekday classes are a bit more of like a drop-in class. I mean, people do sign up ahead of time online, but people are allowed to come at will, and a lot of people come with friends.
What's the geographic area of your organization?
Mostly it's within a few towns, a lot of Milburn Short Hills, South Orange, Maplewood. I'm from Bergen County, but I started attending classes, a branch class up in Ridgewood. So I'm probably one of the furthest afield people. Generally speaking, everybody's within about 10 minutes.
How many instructors work for the organization?
None of them work for the organization.
How many volunteer for the organization?
Right now, we're a little short on teachers. We have maybe a half a dozen people who might teach a class at one time or another.
And your administrative assistant is also a volunteer or employee?
He gets a stipend, but he's also has a full-time job elsewhere.
So in terms of payroll, that's the only person that would be technically on payroll, so to speak?
We do have a resident teacher who also gets a stipend, but those are the only people. But by resident, I don't mean lives there. I mean,
No, I
it's just
understand.
a assigned teacher.
Did you have a question on this?
So in terms of the size of the previous facility that you had versus this one,
The other one was a bit smaller. We had the whole gross area of this floor is about 2,220 square feet, something like that, and we had about 1,500 previously.
in terms of parking spots, was it similar and how busy?
Well, we were at the Milburn Mall, so that was not really a question over there. But we looked at probably 50 different spaces since Hurricane Ida, which is over 2 years now, 2.5 years ago now. And this is one of the only ones that was promising, partly because it does have parking on site. And most of our classes are, they're relatively small. These evening classes, maybe, we've been using St. Stephen's Church. They've been very kind to us over the last year and a half or so. We've been holding classes over there. And there's maybe a dozen parking spaces that are available on that site. And that hasn't been a problem all this time.
Quick question. So just about the zoning. So it is called the Buddhist Center, and you said it's not your typical house of worship. Will you be having any worship at all? Is this an atypical house of worship or not a house of worship at all?
Well, Buddhism is a little bit funny like that. It's like Learning RX was brain training. We're more like mind training. So we do have spiritual components. I mean, there is some Buddhist iconography there because this does come out of the Buddhist tradition, which is an ancient tradition. But it's not the same kind of masses of people arriving, like whole families arriving for a worship service as you would have like on a Sunday morning at a church or a Friday evening at a temple.
I'm actually going to ask our attorney, is there any issue with any kind of religion overlay with this proposal?
No, based on the application materials that were submitted and the testimony of Mr. Hall so far, it doesn't appear that this is presented as a house of worship.
Okay.
That is seeking approval.
Correct.
It's a specific use as being meditative use as described by the applicant through the testimony and the applicant.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yep.
And how many people, so just trying to get a grip on, you said there could be as many as 25 people there on a weekend. What do you anticipate, how many spaces of parking will those 25 people need? And what happens if you have too many people that will exceed parking? capacity.
But again, we do- we
Mr.
do-
Chair, ask a good question in that, because I think there was some, maybe, I don't know if it's conflicting, but if you can just clarify in answering that question about the amount of people who attend on the weekends.
Well, we do have a study program, as I've said, on Sundays, and right now that's about a dozen people. We're using the Vauxhall Community Meeting Center over at Vauxhall, and we've regularly had anywhere from 10 to 12 people attending. There are members who attend on Zoom. We're sort of high-tech Buddhists like that. We have classes that are recorded and on Zoom. And on those events, we haven't been holding those events on Saturday for a long time. But as I said, those, we would hope, maybe 15 to 25 people, something like that.
So 25 people, how much parking do you think they will need?
Well, again, we have a planner who will be talking about those site issues. But if we had 25 people, there's a good chance that would include, 4 or 5 couples, 6 couples. So, you can subtract 1 car for each of those people who come as part of a couple.
So to clarify factually, on the weekends, during the 10 a.m. to noon slot, you anticipate 15 to 25 people, and then during these couple times a year from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., you might have as many as 25 to 30. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Thank you.
So reading through this lease and the hours of parking, which are nothing short of cryptic. Monday, you have 3 p.m. to close parking.
Right, I can make that somewhat less cryptic because I've spent some time looking at it.
Okay.
So basically, the hours there that work for us are every other Saturday, which we
Right.
would have to work out with Dr. Crosser, who owns the dental
Right
facility.
now, every other Saturday, you 7 a.m. to close, and then, every other Saturday, 12 p.m. to close, and 7 a.m. to close, and I have no idea.
Right, so we have full access to that lot every other Saturday. The 12 p.m. to close really doesn't work for us
Right.
because we wouldn't start an event in the middle of the afternoon. So from our perspective, we have use of that lot, we have beneficial use of that lot every other Saturday.
Okay.
Sundays will work for us.
Right.
The doctor has evening hours Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we wouldn't be using,
No, because you have 7 a.m.
Yeah,
to
he has-
11:30 on Tuesdays and
it's not available
Thursdays.
for us until after 8 p.m. So
Right.
basically, the weekends, as I mentioned, and Monday and Wednesday evenings, when he does not have hours. So classes
So
right now.
Wednesday, you're good.
Right, so for instance, right now, we've been having classes on Mondays and Tuesdays. We would probably move that to Mondays and Wednesdays.
Okay.
Unless attendance was so low that we still didn't need any parking beyond our
And then
site.
what is your Friday schedule?
Right now, we haven't had anything on Fridays.
Okay.
It's a little hard to attract people who just, coming home, Friday rush hour, want to start the weekend.
And to circle back to a question that I asked, but I asked probably 3 questions in one. What happens if you have more people that need parking than you have at the current site? Where's the overflow parking?
A block away, heading south on the other side of Main Street.
So street parking, essentially?
No, in a lot. That's
No, so
been
you're
released.
saying if they exceed,
If they exceed the
The-
parking
the-
spaces that are available at that site.
so at the dentist site
Yeah,
and, right.
Okay, well, at those occasions, we have 16 spaces in the rented site, plus 12 available to us on a weekend. So that's 28 spaces. So we don't anticipate on any kind of regular basis needing more parking than that.
Than 28 spaces. It does say somewhere in here that the dentist doesn't promise that he's gonna keep those spaces for you.
Well, he says he's not going to police the lot to make sure somebody doesn't park there.
Yeah,
So the other question I have,
thank
I'm sorry, Gina, if I
No
didn't
worries.
jump on you there.
you.
In the same line of questioning, this lease, the way it's written, okay, you got 1 year and then 9 individual years subsequent, okay? If at any point the doctor decides to either terminate this or sell the property and you lose this, what's plan B? Because this is not a super locked in lease by any means.
the applicant would have to come back to you.
I mean,
There's a change of circumstance.
Yeah, and that's a tough situation to be in, obviously, but especially the way this is written, because this is a very, loosely formed lease, the way it's done. Originally, as I was reading in this application, you had some sort of deal with the church.
That's correct.
What happened to that?
It looked like once we made it clear to the church that we had to have an actual attorney drafted lease to make this, something that we could actually bring before this body, they sort of got into an internal review process with the sort of church elders, and then told us they would have to go to their vestry, and it just looked like that was going to be something that, as generous as they've been with us, that was a process that was going to take several months. And we would not have it in time to be here with it tonight, so we sought parking elsewhere. It's our expectation, although I don't have documentation, it's our expectation that the availability of that parking to us would remain. So that if we did have parking needs greater than our property and Dr. Crosser's property down the street, that we could also actually still overflow into the church lot. But of course, I don't have a lease here tonight to.
So with effectively
Represent
running
that.
your businesses on Monday, Wednesday, and a weekend, and going back to the question I was asked prior about growing this, how do you do that when you're not operating 3 days of the week?
Well, we're not trying to become profitable. We're just trying to offer classes that people will attend.
Well, members are members. I mean, profit is a whole other thing. But you still, if you grow your membership, I mean, it's profitability, it's up to how you run your business.
Right. Well, we're talking about evening classes that have maybe 6 to 12 people, where on nights that we have 28 spaces available to us. So if membership did grow, we have the ability to absorb that.
Anyone have any other questions on the monopolizing?
Just one quick one. It is, of course, the Rahway River is right behind the building.
Yeah, we can't seem to get away from it.
I know.
We were flooded out by the east branch of the Rahway River twice.
Yeah,
And after the second time, everybody said, no, not going to rebuild in that space again. And ironically, we found ourselves
right.
right on
Yeah.
top of the west
On
branch
top
of
of
the
the
Rahway River, but fortunately on the second floor this time.
Okay.
We had 2 feet of water in our space before.
Yeah.
And we-
Till the first floor is condemned.
Yeah.
Well-
I was like, it's right there.
But our landlord has represented to us that they've never actually had the water like we had over at the Middleburn Mall.
Dharma Chakra Buddhist Center, you mentioned the Ridgewood location. Are there many locations?
Those are just like a rented room for the night. We don't actually have a hard physical location, those places. Like we were using a conference room in a church to hold those classes for years.
Is there like a national organization that you're affiliated with or something?
Yes, there is. There's actually a worldwide organization that we're affiliated with.
Who's the president?
Well, there's not a president. There's a spiritual director who is a Buddhist nun over in England.
So, Mr. Hall, with regard to, I want to focus on parking just for a second based on your testimony. During the weekdays, if you're going to have 6 to 12 students plus the teacher and the assistant, that's the maximum you anticipate, correct?
That's what the classes have been running, like 6 on a normal night, 12 on a good night. When the weather's good and, there's not a good show on or something, people come out.
At this particular location, do you expect those numbers to increase or to remain constant?
Well, we're hoping that they do increase somewhat.
Where I'm going with it is wondering aloud whether you are necessarily reliant on the space across the lease space across the street during the weekdays.
During the week evenings.
Correct.
Um,
Weekdays at night.
Well, if the classes are well attended, we expect to be directing people to that parking, yes.
And how does that work when you say directing people? There's not gonna be somebody outside.
No, to let members know, I mean, the classes are promoted on, we have a website. And we do some Facebook advertising of the classes to make people aware that we exist. And when people come, a lot of people are regulars. More than not, the people who come on, say, a Monday night class are regulars. See most of the same faces week over week. A couple people don't come back again. A couple new people come. But we can largely let people know that if you don't find parking here, that there's parking down there. Again, it's not like people, hordes of people we've never met coming in. It's mostly the same people that we get to know week over week. And so there's a fair ability to control what people do.
So I have one more question, based on the floor area and the user group, what's the occupancy load you calculate for the entire space?
Well, occupancy load under the building code is based upon fire safety. And so that generates sometimes really astronomical numbers that are not really consistent with how we actually expect to occupy the space.
But that will be the maximum user you can put into this space, right?
Oh, well, right. I mean, any space, like for instance, this space would be allowed to hold way more people than you would ever really expect to get here. Unconcentrated tables, this would be like one person per 7 square feet in this area without fixed seating. In fact, throughout the entire place, we would never expect to get that. I mean, that would be like, a couple hundred people.
Okay, thank you.
We wouldn't know what to do with that, those people.
Okay, good.
In fact, the building department would actually probably cap it well before that.
Thanks.
One more quick question. Is there a requirement for handicap parking for this type of business or this? type of
Actually,
facility?
I believe the township engineer in this report requested that we stripe for a parking, for
So
handicap
that's
parking.
going to take up one of your parking spaces?
Well, it would, yes, actually, that's,
Right.
again, our
And-
planner.
It still
will-
counts towards,
It's still
it still
counted
counts
as
towards the
space.
count.
It's counting your count.
Well, we lose
But you have
one
to save
because
it.
the first one
Save
has to be
still
a
counts
van
as
accessible
space.
space, which has to be 16 feet wide, so, we would stripe that probably under the building, but again, I don't want to step on the planner's testimony since he brought the site plan.
All right, yeah, I'll hold the next question for Mr. Keller. So,
The lease you have at 150 Melbourne Avenue, what's the term of that lease?
I can answer that if you don't know.
Sure, please.
It's a 5-year term with a 5-year renewal.
Okay.
And that's why the parking lot
So this,
mirrors it.
right, so I was just gonna say, this lease, the parking lease, the way I read it, sounds like you actually, you have 9 options.
You do have, that's what
So
it
it's
is.
essentially a
You read
10-year
it
lease.
correctly. You
right?
read it correctly.
Okay,
Correct.
okay.
And honestly, our long-term plan, if we wind up with so many people attending our classes that we can't accommodate them, is that we start looking for another place.
You mentioned you had 25 members at this point.
Approximately.
Approximately 25. But like your classes are not limited to just members, right? That could be for
Correct.
anybody.
Well, like the study program on Sundays, that's going to be all members. You have to be a member to attend a class like that. The evening classes, mostly those people are not members. A couple of members might come out just because they want to come to a meditation class or they come to sort of support the class. Sometimes we have, 2 or 3 people attend those classes. But it's nice for them to see a member of the class. They can talk with them, ask them questions and so forth.
So the pool that you're potentially drawing from isn't just 25 people, it could be
Oh, that's right.
infinite.
That's right. Well, infinite
Well, not
in theory.
but finite with hundreds of millions.
Right.
Need a bigger.
And as long as we've been around, 17 years in the community, we've just don't get that type of, droves of people. We would say it's their karma.
Yes.
Not, some people are attracted to come to a meditation class and some people aren't.
Any other questions?
Mr. Audience?
Yeah, anyone in the audience have any questions for this witness, either regarding the architectural testimony or the testimony regarding the operation of the facility? Comments will be held to the end, so. Very good.
Richard Keller.
Do you swear affirm testimony about to give in tonight's hearing to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Richard Keller, Keller.
What are your qualifications in the fields of civil engineering and professional planning?
Yes, I've been a licensed engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey for more than 40 years. I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering with a concentration in water resources and environmental engineering, and that is from Rutgers University. I also hold a Master's in Architecture with a declared concentration in urban planning and design, and that is from the New Jersey Institute of Technology, where I was also an adjunct professor for about 11 years and maybe going back soon. I have appeared before this board, the planning board, about 110 boards throughout the state of New Jersey. I have provided planning support services to the Borough of Caldwell, and I was the planning board and board of adjustment engineer in the township of Long Hill for 3 years. I just finished 12 hours of continuing education last week in preparation for license renewal next month, so my licenses are both in good effect.
Thank you. Credentials are accepted by this board.
Thank you.
Before you start, what have you reviewed and prepared for your testimony this evening?
I have reviewed the master plan. My firm prepared the base, actually, we didn't prepare the base survey. We prepared the site plan they have before you. We did the zoning analysis. I visited the site at least 3 times, in addition driving by it for the last 35, 40 years. We've also reviewed the township engineer's memorandum as well as the planner's memorandum in advance of this hearing. Starting with the cover sheet, that's part of the application you have before you, so it wouldn't be our normal practice to mark that into evidence. The site is a rectangular site that is located, sorry, there's not a north arrow, but the left side is north, the top of the drawing is to the east. The site's a corner lot at the southeast intersection of Ridgewood Road and Main Street. Main Street is designated as County 577, but we're told by the engineer it's technically not a county road any longer, at least not under the jurisdiction. But it is at that intersection. The property, the east side of the property is defined by the west branch of the Royal River. So if we look at the 2022 aerial photo, which I'm going to just blow up that, so I'll have my first exhibit will be A1. With today's date, it is an annotated aerial photo prepared by Casey and Keller dated May 4th, 2024. And the image underneath that is a
March.
Sorry. The March, thank you. Getting ahead of myself. March 4th, 2024, and the base image is from high resolution photography that we get quarterly from nearmap.com. The image there is taken March 11th, 2022. And you can see that the easterly side, again, the top of the drawing, is defined by the west branch of the Rahway River as it winds through Taylor Park, under Ridgewood Road, makes the curve up behind Lakeside Village up to the dam at Lakeside, or the former dam at Lakeside. The property is located wholly within the R8 residential multifamily zone, and the lot contains 7,523 square feet, or just over, almost 0.2 acres. The neighborhood context is that we are located, as was shown in the exhibit, we're located in the yellows, the sort of light tan colored zone, which is the R8 zone. On the other side of the street, behind the properties that are in the R8 zone, which is a multifamily zone, is the R7 zone, which is also a multifamily zone. And to the east of us is the South Mountain section, which is an R6 single-family residential zone. On the corner opposite on Ridgewood is the conservation zone, which is Taylor Park. And right across the street from the property is the Millburn Co-op Nursery School. But I will say that for any of those who came by the site during the day in the last couple weeks, you've seen a lot more than 2 cars there. It's because pretty much all the moms use that as a parking spot to run in and drop off. They don't use the available parking in the street, which there are actually within 400 feet. There's 27 street parking spaces. But because the property has been so underutilized for so long, if you've seen extra cars there, it's because their mom's parking there temporarily to drop off at the school. But any other day or non-school hours, there are generally 2 cars on that site, occasionally 3.
Rich, do you point out to the benefit of the board and public where the proposed leased parking
Yep.
spaces are?
And that's why I went to this one, it's a little bit about an enlargement. You can see the first concentric blue line is the areas within 200 feet, and then the second one is the areas within 400 feet. You see just about 235 feet to the south along Main Street on the opposite side, there's a parking lot on Dr. Crosser's property. That's where we have the additional spaces available on that side.
So is that, let's just be clear for the record, so is that block 902 lot 1?
That would be, yes, block 902, lot 1, it's in the R8 zone. We got a use variance for Dr. Crosser many years ago to have a commercial space in the R8 zone. And that's the parking lot that's subject to the lease. So you can see, the first part of the parking lot is 235 feet. It's all of the parking is within 400 feet. I will also point out that between both sides of Main Street in that 400 feet, and that's before you get to the B4 Central Business District, which starts at Church Street, there are an additional 27 street side, curbside parking spaces that are available throughout the day. The other uses along Main Street are a mix of commercial uses, offices, institutional uses, some single-family homes. Further up between us and the Lakeside Village, just off the drawing, to the right or to the south is the ShopRite. Coming across the street, diagonally across the street is the St. Stephen's. That's where classes have been held so far, and while there is a tacit agreement for parking that we couldn't hammer down with a lease in time for this hearing, that's where the meetings have been occurred since the washout at the Millburn Mall, and that's directly across the street. So there's some belief that there will be some access, but we certainly locked down the number of spaces on the lease within 400 feet of the property, 235 feet away to be exact. And as I said, the CBD zone starts at Church Street, which is just a couple hundred feet away. And I think that's important when I get to my planning proofs as well. The floodplain, the area in the bluish shade and the reddish shade are all parts of the floodplain, the special flood hazard area that's associated with the west branch of the Roy River. The blue area is what we generally call the limits of the 100-year flood, special hazard area. That is called the flood fringe also, and this is the area that is subject to 100-year flooding. The purple area is what's known as the floodway. Floodways is where 95% of the water is carried during a flood event. So that 5%, believe it or not, is what washes out, and 95% of it stays within the purple zone. And what generally happens is once the water comes around, can't get through the bridges on Essex Street, it comes around the corner of Essex Street near Charlie Brown, and Main Street becomes part of the river. What happens is, and then Taylor Park also starts to flood, and it comes across, and Main Street becomes the primary channel. Behind the building is actually not much flooding in real life, and the water that comes across the frontage of this building is almost negligible. Where you really get the flooding, you get about 6 inches of flooding across the doors on the building next door, but the water is moving so quickly that despite the fact that we're ground zero in the flood zone, the first floor according to the owners who built the building, has actually never flooded, but it is right in the middle of the floodway. Because it's in the floodway, not just the flood zone, development is highly regulated on this property. The primary NJDEP restrictions are that there's no new multifamily housing because you need to have dry access. There's no creation of additional commercial or residential habitable space on the first floor. No fill can be placed on the site. And there's also what's called the substantial improvement clause, which means if we invest more than 50% of the value of the structure, you either need to, you stop work and you either need to remove the building or start substantially flood-proofing with a hardship application. So essentially, this building is heavily regulated, and I will say that the proposed application, we're basically doing nothing to the site. We're not filling, we're not adding any square footage, but it also means when you look at the permitted uses in the zone, single family and two family, first of all, it's certainly not an attractive, being in the middle of a flood, whether it's an island or not, is not an attractive place for a single or two family house. Secondly, the substantial improvement clause would probably prohibit you from investing in to make it one or two family. Multifamily, again, attached dwellings, apartments are not permitted because you don't have dry access. So of all of the uses that are permitted in the R8, none of them are viable due to DP restrictions. And the fact is, we have an existing commercial site that's been here that predates zoning as far as I know. But again, none of the uses permitted in the zone are viable. With regard to the site itself, I'll go to my exhibit A2. This also, I'm going to tell my employee that he doesn't get his paycheck until May. They put the wrong date on it. But anyway, this is photo board number 1. The exhibit was prepared by Casey and Keller, dated March 4th, 2024. Photographs 2 and 4 were taken by my office yesterday, Sunday, and photographs 1 and 2 are taken from Google Street View in May 2022. And you can see that the existing, this is from 2022, and that was May 2022, and there was some trees which were really gangling, getting into the wires, and those have been removed, but there are some trees and shrubs on the corner that block some visibility. Those are actually subject to removal. You can see that the building has a stone veneer, a single story on the bottom. That's where the existing office space is. There are 2 spaces under the building, and then above is the 1,921 square feet of office space, formerly what was termed office space, that was part of the Brain Center, and that is what the applicant, the center proposes to occupy. So it is on the 2nd floor. Looking at it to the right of is the old model train shop, and as you're aware from probably reading in Mr. Sosilo's application, that approval will be going away because that applicant could not come to terms with the current landlord, so that they have withdrawn that application, and that will not go forward as an event space. And that's why we were able to use that same parking lease for Dr. Crosser's. There was no duplicity. There was no trying to double dip when that deal fell through, and we couldn't get the church synod to get their lawyers arranged quickly enough. We sought to reactivate that same lease from Dr. Crosser that was used on the model train shop, the trifecta event space, and we transferred it to this building here. You can see from the intersection, here's on the left of photograph number 3, this is where the co-op is, and there's some, as I said, there's been some parking, but obviously, and there's been a good relationship, and those people were told they could park there until we had a tenant, and they don't have to stop. But you can see that the building does have driveways on both Main Street as well as Ridgewood, and right behind the property, you can see that's the river that runs behind us. Again, in these flooding events, it doesn't get up over into the neighborhood immediately on the other side. It's in the South Mountain section. It actually doesn't get into the back of the building because the primary floodway has jumped over to Main Street for the time being. So with regard to the existing survey, this is part of the package that's before you. The existing building on the first floor, there's an overhang. That does have 1,042 square feet of office space. The second floor being 1,921 square feet of vacant space. The space was occupied first by Dr. Strulowitz when he built the building, and then that practice was sold to Dr. McGlone, who was there until 2008. Dr. McGlone then moved up to 249 Main Street, and then sometime around 2014 is when it became the Learning RX, which was the Brain Studio. The building has had difficulty in leasing, partly because it's difficult to find users that don't need many parking spaces, and it's difficult to find intrepid users who are willing to take space that's in a floodplain. So certainly, since the pandemic, this has been vacant. It's been obvious that there's not many cars in the parking lot. The site has been maintained, as was evidenced by the recent removal of some trees and upgrading the landscaping, but it has been somewhat a 1-2 punch between the train station being not utilized at all and the site being underutilized. So it's an opportunity for us to reactivate this site with, I think, a user that is complementary to the existing users on the site, and I think we can make the parking work. With regard to the Learning RX actually got a similar use variance. Well, actually, they similarly got a use variance, and they also got a parking and loading variance. Basically what we're looking for today. The site is generally flat, and as indicated, circulation is in, although it's not marked. The engineer has asked that we mark that specifically as an entrance only to allow access to the 5 angled spaces. And then there are 2 spaces underneath the building, which would be reserved for, I'm going to go to the third sheet now, just to advance that a little bit. Just because part of our plan is to strike the spaces that were there previously. And you can see that there are 5 spaces that are angled spaces facing Main Street. There are 2 tandem spaces on the right side of the building, one after the next. And then there are 2 spaces underneath the building, which would be reserved for the first floor tenant and the landlord. And there are 3 existing parking spaces on the left side. Those 3 spaces is where we don't have enough room actually under the building. So these 3 spaces, per the engineer's memo, would be consolidated into 2. It's always a funny condition, only because we are expanding the parking need on the second floor. Do we possibly trigger an ADA requirement to convert to create a space? But it's good planning anyways, and the engineer has asked that we do it to be compliant with the current ordinance, even though you can make the argument that there's some latitude on the existing site. But we're happy to take those 3 spaces. Unfortunately, as was indicated by the architect, the first space in any site plan must be van accessible. So that's an 8-foot space and an 8-foot striped area. So it's a 16-foot wide space. So it really takes up 2 spaces, and then we will lose 1 parking spot. So on the site, as indicated, there are 12 spaces on the site. Ingress off of Main Street, egress onto Ridgewood, and those would be striped accordingly with striping. We showed it, but we didn't call it out. And we'll also add signage in ingress only, do not exit, egress only, do not enter. We'll add the appropriate signage.
Would you be a right-hand turn out of that or no? I mean, I don't know how you make a left anyway, but.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's not signed as such.
No.
Most times, anytime I've pulled in just to check it out, I've always made the right, because it's, the problem, especially with the landscaping, which we're removing the tall landscaping there now. The problem you get when you leave and the tall landscaping, you can't see when someone sweeps around that. So we're happy to put in a right turn only.
Also school and stuff over that 3 o'clock there, it's brutal.
Yeah, I don't disagree. So
Rich, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Regarding the parking and location of it, my recollection is that for the prior user of that second floor space, that they needed variances also for not having a loading area and also for parking in the front yard. Does that still apply here?
I'm not sure about the parking in the front yard. We definitely need one.
It was called out the last time.
Yeah, we definitely need one for loading. It's kind of an odd, we give a matrix of all the permitted uses, and the way your planner has basically said is none of that applies because they're all use specific. So I'm not sure if the no parking in the front yard was use specific or not, but we're certainly happy if we need variance relief from that, we would request that. And we think it would be subsumed into the D variance anyways. We're happy to do that just to make sure we cross the T's and dot the I's. We are requesting again, the board has on a site plan for this size and this use, the board has the discretion of deciding whether a loading space is required or not. So it's again that gray area. If you don't think one's loaded, then we know one's needed, then we don't need a variance. Otherwise, we do need the variance. It's safer just to say, yes, we need a variance for having no loading space.
What about the use of the tandem spaces?
Also, that was approved under the prior resolution. So that is not typical. We're starting to see that more and more in indoor parking in multifamily, but it's not specifically permitted in our ordinance. But it was part of the 2014 approval for RX learning.
Take me through on that, where you would put your loading and your handicap spot.
Well, here, the handicap spot is going to go in here. So we'll do, probably stripe that. Use a darker marker. We'll make that the handicap.
And I know you're asking for relief on the loading, but hypothetically, where would you envision?
Well, I don't think we need a loading space. First of all, the first floor tenant goes to UPS. They take all their packages on a daily basis. I'm sorry, Federal Express, not UPS. They take their packages to Federal Express. And they only get deliveries, other than an occasional delivery of paper from Staples or according to the
Not even. He picks it up himself.
It doesn't, okay. So from our testimony when we met last week is there's never any arrival, never any drop-offs or pickups from FedEx. It's all handled, it's handled internally. Garbage is removed off-site by the owners, and any use on the second floor, they would continue to have their cleaning company. If they come in every other week, or if it's going to be volunteers again, which is probably the case, again, what they've indicated, that'll all go out. So there's no outside storage of recycling. There's no outside storage of garbage. There's no drop-offs. There's no pickups. And again, when we met the other day, Frank and one of the directors indicated that similar with office supplies, they're all bought in by volunteers. So there's really never going to be a delivery that we would need. And that's pretty rare, actually. I think that there's really no need for one. Obviously, what's unique about this site, unlike most of the rest of Main Street, certainly if you come past Church Street and get into the G4 Central Business District, is a UPS truck. For some reason, had to come to the site. It was a rare delivery, whatever. They could certainly pull in, idle, go inside, and pull out. Again, during the day, there's never more than 2 or 3 cars parked in that lot. So certainly, a delivery could occur. They don't happen, but they could occur on the lot. I find getting UPS or FedEx drivers to actually enter a lot is like herding cats. They just, you can give them a 15 by 60 foot loading zone. They're not going to pull into it. But
in the street with their luggers on.
Exactly. What kills me is in the downtown, no less, and they're taking up the lane. But here there is that availability. It's not necessarily, but it is available. So obviously, the proposed plan is to reuse that full 1,921 square feet of vacant space for the Dharma Chakra Buddha Center, which your planner has agreed is an instructional school/studio, not a religious house of worship.
By the way.
What's that?
It's a nonprofit. Is that so structured? Yes, it is. Thank you.
And then finally, if I just go to the landscape plan. This is lighting and landscaping. So in addition to the goosenecks that are really shining back on the building to illuminate the verbiage that sits on 2 spots, we do have a lighting plan because as required by your ordinance, we need to bring the site up to compliance with lighting standards. There are actually 1 external light mounted at 8 feet that provides light into that alleyway. It's relatively low in height at 8 feet and relatively low in its illumination. And then there are 3 external mounted, very small, 12-inch by 10-inch, 13 by 10-inch building mounted lights that basically shine enough to get safe lighting at the intersection, both intersections, and the backup areas. And there's lighting under the canopy, and under the canopy where you've got parking. What's And those lights are also, I think the lights that are mounted in the building, again, they're relatively minimal in size and appearance. And those are mounted at 14 feet, to make sure we get lighting that just meets the minimum as it gets to the driveway. This lighting is fully compliant with both the maximum, minimum, and most importantly, the uniformity requirements within your ordinance. And by the way, my office, my lighting expert, is the one who met with the township engineer to talk about optimal lighting plans when they wrote the new standard. And Brian, my landscape and lighting architect, provided the gold standard, and that's what got written into your ordinance. So anytime we meet the gold standard, we're very proud, because what our goal is to provide is very even lighting across the site. So these uniformity numbers, the max to min and average to min, 2.0 on the average to min, and maximum of 3.6 are very low. That indicates it's a very even, low lit lighting plan. And with no spillover into any of the residential neighborhoods, and no spillover into the streets, it really is just enough to provide safety at the ingress and egress, and for anybody who's crossing the lot. We are also planning a landscape plan, so we're removing pretty much all the landscaping. What's most important is that we remove all of the tall vegetation that was blocking any either site triangle across the intersection of Main Street, or any site triangles across from the driveway egress. So that's all being replaced with a much more attractive and manicured plan, and that includes, I believe there are 2 honey locusts, and then there's a number of inkbright plants, drift roses. Altogether, there's about 140 different plants that are being planted in that buffer area to dress that up and make it much more attractive. But more importantly, they're low in scale and maintainable, so it'll be a much safer plan than what exists there today. I would point out that Frank mentioned that we are providing the signage. The signage, there's some lighting on that, but it doesn't affect the ground planks. It's really focused against the building. And there is one sign along the banding. So basically, if you go back to photo board number 1, which was A2, like that. A2, you see there's a band on the building where you have 150, and there's a band where it says currently Medical Park Plaza, harkening back to its days as an optometrist. That's the band that Dharma Chakra Buddhist Center would go in on both sides of the building. That band, and that's limited to 7.25 square feet. So it's very small. It's basically the verbiage. It's small, elegant, and it really just provides wayfinding so people know that the center is there. But we do need variance relief because in an R8 residential zone, your maximum signage allowed is 2 feet. Again, no increase in building coverage, no change in coverage, no fill being placed. We're not adding anything that would come near to half the value of the property. So we are fully compliant with all DEP regulations. Before I go on to the planning proofs, I will just address the Township Engineer Martha Callahan's memorandum dated February 28, 2024. Some of it is restating what's on the site. Item number 2 on page 1, we have indicated we will reduce our parking inventory by 1 to provide a van accessible handicap spot. We will delineate the spacing, the striping that was shown on the site plan but not called out on the painting on the driveway, and we'll add appropriate signage subject to their approval, should this board approve it. And Ms. Callahan notes that visibility is currently obstructed, and our landscape plan has been very sensitive to that. And her final comment was that the trench drain at the entrance should be cleaned out, which we would agree to do. And then Ms. Callahan indicated that we are compliant with the floodplain regulations. If we decided that we needed to revise or renovate the HVAC, she's asking we elevate them to be about 1 foot above the floodplain, which is typical. There's no need for us to do that. And as I said, what's kind of odd about this site is actually the back of the site does not get much flood water. So those are safe and out of the flood zone where they are. But we would agree that if for some reason those need to be replaced, they would be elevated to be essentially 1 foot above the flood zone, which would be about 4 foot high. So we would fully be compliant with the items requested by your engineer in the memorandum. The site data box, as is shown on the third sheet of our drawing, SE3. What's noticeable on that is when you go down the existing, really doesn't matter, when you look at the proposed, everything is either not applicable or there's no change, because we're not changing anything on the site. I would say there was one correction on there, as a transposed number on the building coverage. 31.06 is listed, that's actually 31.60, Rob. But it was just a transposition of those two numbers. It doesn't require any kind of variance relief, but I just wanted to make that correction. So with regard to the variance relief requested, we obviously need a use variance. That's to replace the past non-conforming commercial use, the office, with another non-conforming commercial use. We actually think they're both kind of similar, as Mr. Hall said, in that they are really both had an instructional component similar to an instructional school or studio, which is permitted in the downtown district. That's a D variance. We need 5 affirmative votes from the board to allow the use. We also need some C variances, again, for parking and loading. The prior mix of uses, 13 spaces were required, 12 were provided. That means it was a 1-space deficiency, and they did get a variance for that. The proposed use, 25 is required. With the loss of that 1 space for the handicap, that'll now be 11 spaces, which means we have a deficiency of 14 spaces. So the net increase in the parking is 12 or 13, depending on your perspective. But regardless, with the required use needing 25 spaces and the lease for 16 spaces, the use of 11 on site, that's 27 spaces. Most of any time after 5 o'clock during the day. 2 of those spaces will be reserved for the first floor. Again, no loading zone exists, and so we're requesting a variance for that as well. Signage, as I indicated, we've got 2 signs. They're allowed 2 feet of signage and a maximum graphics height of 1 foot. Our graphics is actually less than 1 foot, but there's 7.25 square feet on each side. And as Frank indicated, that actually is 1.8% of the signable facade along Main Street, and it represents 8.7 of the signable facade along Ridgewood Road. And just for comparison, in the B4 Central Business District and the B3 zone as well, you're allowed 20% of the facade area or 24-inch graphics. Obviously, we're moving into a residential zone. It wouldn't be appropriate, but just 1.8 and 8.7 are significantly less than that. In the CMO zone, which is just up the block on where my office is, allows 10% of facade area. So we're still, it's very de minimis size, and it's really, it's not much in the way of advertising. It just provides wayfinding. And then obviously, we need a waiver of the environmental impact statement, and since the site is fully developed, we see no need to. There's no change in the sanitary sewer. There's no change to the site. We're requesting a waiver of that as well. With regard to the planning testimony for a use variance, the positive criteria needs to be met, and the as well as the negative criteria. With regard to the positive criteria, we need to establish special reasons to meet the positive criteria, and we must show that the proposed project carries out one of the purposes of zoning as outlined in municipal land use law. The case law actually finds that there's sufficient special reasons in the grant of a D variance when the proposed law carries out any of the 16 purposes. We think we advance 5, and I'll go through exactly how we do. Under 4055 D2 A, we believe it promotes public health and general welfare. It eliminates a longstanding vacancy, underutilized. 50% vacant buildings have a negative impact on the community in general. The meditation center complements the first floor use with asynchronous operating hours. The shared parking works because the center and the office have differing hours of operation. This provides for a variety of commercial uses to meet the needs of the community and all New Jersey citizens. The center has long served the Millburn and Short Hills community. And of those 27 members, most are from within the community. So certainly a demand for the use within the community and within the surrounding communities. Contributes to the well-being of persons, neighborhoods, and communities. Provides for an instructional use that is within walkable distance of the Washington and South Mountain neighborhoods, as well as for apartment dwellers along Main Street. It provides for use that can supplement existing uses within the nearby B4 Central Business District. It's kind of like we're looking at it both ways. we're close enough to the central business district that somebody can come here and they can walk into town after, at 8:30, they can walk into town. I don't think they're going to be carousing at moonshine and dancing after a Buddhist meditation center, but there's certainly the opportunity to go into the downtown and park. While parked there, parking is allowed after 6 o'clock on the nearby streets as well, along Main Street, and they can certainly there'll be a benefit to the C4 Central Business District. It also promotes a desirable visual environment, and that is through an improved landscape plan and a very well-designed, attractive lighting plan. And finally, we're really promoting the conservation of historic energy resources through the shared parking facilities. There's no point in creating additional parking when you don't need it, especially when you have uses that don't need the parking at the same time. It's a much more environmental solution to encourage shared parking. Many towns actually require shared parking in their business districts now and require cross easements, and it's moving toward trying to create less parking. We have, in this country, we have an amazing amount of parking spaces per person. 8 parking spaces, I think, per person is what it's estimated at. And we don't all have cars. Cars are decreasing. And we do think that the shared parking is ideal. So we advanced 5 purposes of zoning. However, case law also requires that we demonstrate that the site is particularly suited for the proposed use to further enhance general welfare. Caveats on that. Demonstrating the site is particularly suitable for the proposed use does not require proof that there's no other potential location for the use in the community. So just because there could be another place for this doesn't mean that this still isn't particularly suited for the proposed use. It also does not demand evidence that a permitted use couldn't work on the property, although in this case, none of the permitted uses do work on the property. Rather, it's an inquiry into whether the property is particularly suited for the proposed use, in the sense that it is especially well suited for the use in spite of the fact that it's not permitted in the zone. We believe that the site is particularly suited for this project. The site and available office space are perfect size. Actually, it's funny. Buddhists are very optimistic and very honest, because in all our discussions, they were happy with 6 to 8 people, 15 occasionally. Somehow at one point we got to 30 people. At no point was that ever even a dream in all our discussions up till now. But even if they did get up to 30, I think this site, because of its unique phasing of the demand, certainly works well. There's a desire, and I would also say, spaces like the children's area, they don't have that many children. This has been a tough space to lease. The lease rates are very attractive. Because they're very attractive, it's really more space than they need. In their wildest dreams, will they occupy it? Yes. Do they expect they're going to get a children's service to occupy all the seats? No. They certainly would never get a children's service and an adult service at the same time. So some of it is filling out the space because it was available. And as indicated, when they book appointments, it's done through Eventbrite, so they know how many people are coming. If it's on a night when they can't get it, they can limit it to the amount of parking on site, and no more people will be permitted to buy into a class. On those days when they know they have more than that coming on a weekend, on Eventbrite, it can say you must use the parking lot at Dr. Crosser's at such and such a street. So that's certainly controllable. And as I said, the hours of operation dovetail with the first floor use. The existing parking lot will satisfy the need for the center most of the time. And that is literally the 2 days a week they're in practice, and Sundays. It's only the Saturdays, every other Saturday, that they might. And if they get back to anywhere near the same popularities they had pre-COVID, they might need some of those spaces at Dr. Crosser's. The site is not viable for or in demand for any of the permitted uses. The site is particularly unsuitable for any of the permitted uses, and we think the site is actually particularly suited for the proposed use. We also need some C variances. For all other C variances, the positive criteria is usually subsumed into the D use variance. However, we can also argue both of these, the variances under both C1 and C2. The parking is a C1 variance where the site is fully developed with no ability to add parking. Size and shape of the lot combined with the size and location of the lawfully existing structure means that we can't add any parking without taking down the building. We think that also a C2 variance is appropriate. It's a better planning alternative. to use an existing underutilized parking lot 200 and some feet away for that rare occasion when the need for parking will exceed the 11 spaces available. So we think it's a better planning alternative. And again, available on-site parking will be more than adequate most of the time. Signage is generally a C2. It's a better planning alternative to provide signage and site identification to motorists. This advances public safety and aesthetics. With regard to the negative criteria for all variances and the way it's modified for use variance, first of all, you need to meet the two-prong criteria. There's no substantial detriment to the public good, and there's no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance. With regard to the public good, we think there's no detriment to the character of the neighborhood. The impacts are mitigated by the fact that there's no activity at the rear of the site. Parking variance is mitigated by the 16-car lease on the property, which is 200, and actually, as you walk, it's 265. As the crow flies, it's 235, but as you walk, it's 265 from the property in question. And again, outside of the B4 district and within 400 feet of the site, there are 27 street spaces available if they're more convenient. Many patrons that come to the center, as indicated, are couples taking a single vehicle. That decreases the any possible detriment, mitigates against it. With any application, there's always some negative. The question is whether it's substantial or not. We believe on net, the benefits clearly outweigh any detriments here. The loading space is not needed, so we've requested a variance for that. Parking in the front yard, that's a C1 variance. It's existed since this building was approved, whenever Dr. Strulowitz first built it. It is what it is, and we're looking to keep that. It's well screened by an attractive landscaping plan that'll still allow for visibility for driving. No impairment to the master plan and zoning ordinance. We think that it's certainly one of the goals of the master plan is to maintain and enhance economic viability of the downtown and other business districts. I would say that in actual function, much of the R8 zone is a business district. That's the way it's been functioned, and that's why our master plan is asking that we restudy that area. Objective 4.04 is to strengthen existing business centers, including the downtown core and other business areas. I think this will actually strengthen. It provides, again, people on the street, people can walk over, they can drive over, they can walk over from any one of 3 residential neighborhoods, and they can also get the benefit of a short walk into the downtown. We believe that the use is not inconsistent with the master plan. As was indicated in the planner's report, that anytime you have a D variance, there's an enhanced quality of proof. And that's the question is, if it's such a good use, why didn't the master plan contemplate it? We have to reconcile the omission of this use from the master plan. And in this case, it's normally that the use is so new, we didn't think about it. But in this case, that's not it. It's because our master plan actually did contemplate that this is an appropriate place for other uses. From the 2008 master plan recommendations on page 53, the recommendation is to examine whether lots in the R8 zone along Main Street should be rezoned for office/commercial use to better reflect the current development pattern. And from the topology or planner's report, they state here the master plan recognizes that the existing residential zoning is inconsistent with established land development patterns, which may be better regulated and served by zoning that permits and regulates such uses. So clearly, it's not been omitted from the master plan. It's been contemplated that we should probably think about some form of overlay zone or some form of new zoning that regulates a lot of the existing commercial uses, whether it's the event spaces across the street, whether it's the ShopRite, whether it's any of the other businesses that are the dry cleaner, the former model shop. That it's a different development pattern than we're expecting, and the location of the floodplain means that the proposed uses or the allowable uses are just never going to happen. We think that this is a unique applicant. We think that while there's some concern that what happens if they grow, they haven't grown. They have abilities to control that through the way they book, through the possibility of spaces also on the street, the spaces possibly in St. Stephen's. And quite frankly, while it's not a for-profit business, if they get so popular that they can't meet their demand, they're not going to book, which means they're going to start looking for another place. As any, again, I hate to say business, but any business does, if you can't meet your client's needs, you'll search for a better spot. We think that it's one of the best uses you're going to find, and I can't imagine what else you would want to put there other than, you're not going to find too many uses like the first floor that takes up 1,900 square feet or 1,700 square feet and only has 3 users on a daily basis. It's just not going to happen. So I think it's an opportunity to invigorate the space, to get it occupied, which is always good for the main entrance into your town as you come into the B4 district. We think it's a good application, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So the handicap spot, the accessible spot, is that in your calculation right now? Because you showed 12 existing. Do you lose anything?
We lose one.
Sorry, so you're actually 11. then.
11, yep.
Yes, okay. Any questions from?
So this may not be for you, maybe for Mr. Hall. So stop me if it's not permitted. Is this, and this really goes from Mr. Simon, is this area zoned for medical use?
No.
No.
No. Okay, so my question would be, if I can ask it, please let me know if I can't. Is there gonna be any psychotherapy there? Because I know you said that people can come in and perhaps they need some psychological adjustment. Is there gonna be any psychotherapy there?
No, there's no psychotherapy. It's all internal processing. So, and meditative, but there's no, and I will say, I didn't mention, it was probably in my notes there, that in addition to all those good things, there is a pretty well-defined track record of meditation providing both psychological and health benefits to people. So there's really another way that we advance the purposes of the zoning, but there's no psychotherapy.
So check the box. There's no psychological therapy there. It's just meditation. Okay.
Exactly.
So Rich, focusing on this for a second, your point, I think when you say the 2017 master plan, 2018, that there's a recommendation for office or commercial along this corridor. Does help the board out in terms of if it were to be rezoned for those uses as recommended by the master plan, what would be the parking calculation for those uses versus this use, and whether there's a reason to justify one or the other?
Well, I'm kind of expecting that, these recommendations don't ever happen overnight because there's a lot that goes into them, a lot of thinking, not just about this use, but also about, there are 2 types of instructional studio. There's the more one-on-one instructional studio, and there's the big, spin class, or there's the Orange Theory that gets 1 instructor and 38 people if they're happy. So there's a difference between those. So we're hoping that when the township committee and the planning board looks at the next time, they will consider some more facets. But right now, if we look at the usage, we basically, let me make sure. Yeah, so we assigned the uses that would be appropriate for that particular zone. So 1 per 100 is what's used for educational facilities or instructional studios. So that is a larger amount than would be for office, which is 1 per 250, or retail, which is 1 per 200. But I don't think, when they say commercial uses, I don't think they excluded the possibility of there being this type of use. So we don't know where they're going to go on that, but certainly there's a.
And what was the ratio when this was an optometry office?
I think medical, as I recall, was actually 1 per 150. So 1 per, up until maybe 5 years ago, instructional studios were considered to be retail services, so they were 1 per 200. It's only within the last 5 years that we've upped that to be the 1 per 1.
1 per 100.
1 per 100. Yeah.
Thank you.
And if the 6th edition of IT parking just came out, and there's still no help with that. There's no defined use for this. We checked it to see if I could get a lower number, but it's not there yet.
Any other questions?
We're on for site plan on this as well.
Yes.
Is there any anticipated changes to the finishes there, or are they adding finishes or anything to the building itself?
Nope.
Anything else? Any questions from the audience for Mr. Keller? Please come forward. Please just state your name. Good for.
Sure. Eric Feigel, Lakeside Village. So can I just look at my notes so I do this
Sure.
right?
These are questions.
Yes, I'm going to ask a question. Yes.
How do you spell your last name?
F as in Frank, E-I, G as in George, E-L.
Thank you.
So I don't know who to address this to, so,
You're gonna address everything to Mr.
Okay.
Keller.
so who checks if the business is using more than the allocated spaces? How do we know that we don't have a problem?
Generally, it's an enforcement issue, so if any of the neighbors see if there's a problem, then they generally talk to the police or they call the zoning officer and inquire about it. But again, because they have the ability, they book, each person that comes in books online and pays online, they have the ability to control that based upon either the 11 spaces available on site or the 27 that between the two.
Can I ask a second?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so then clarify for me how, wait, let me get the terminology right. What forces the participants, for lack of a better word, to not park on the street, but to use the lease arrangement with the dentist?
Well, I would say, being somebody who drives and parks myself almost every day in the downtown, because I make it my business to do that because I'm part of the downtown. My suspicion is if there's 2 spots in front of the dry cleaner, because the dry cleaner is also closed at night, maybe they're not the laundromat, but the dry cleaner is, then I'm probably going to park at those 2 curbside spots. But there will be 16 spaces available on the nights we book classes or on the days we book classes at Dr. Prosser's space. So I can't force people to park there. There's no convenient parking anywhere near Ridgewood Road. I'd have to park way deep in the R6 zone to get my first open space. So the viability of spaces would be further down past St. Stephen's possibly, but there's very limited between the curb cuts. Actually, it's going to be much easier just to go down and park. The people do what's easiest and what's available. So they're going to go, like I said, if there's available spots, and there is parking between Ridgewood and Church Street, I think it is, where there is parking along Main Street up to Taylor where the B4 starts. There are a number of spaces that are underutilized every night right along this curb line here. So I can't see any way that anybody's going to go past a parking lot with 16 spaces to come anywhere near the entrance to Lakeside Village, which is over here. There's really no available parking anywhere along the section of Ridgewood. I have to go at least 250 feet up Rector Street to get some street parking. So with the 11 available on site, the 16 here, and the 27 spaces along within 400 feet on both sides of the street, again, we're not talking about a flywheel or a place that gets a lot of people at concentrated areas, and they come at night. Generally, is indicated 7 to 8:30. So I can't see any reason that they would go further down. I'm thinking just from your perspective, you're at Lakeside Village. I'm another 300 feet up the road here. I can't see any reason that they would go past available parking to come down the hall.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Keller from the audience? Any comments regarding this application from members of the audience?
Can I then
Absolutely.
come back up?
We'll swear you in for your comments.
Just raise your right hand. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Your name and address for the record.
Eric Feigel. I own property in Lakeside Village, 54A and 54B.
Go ahead.
So I have an objection with some of the parking, which I think has been conveyed here. I just have a concern that it's going to get a little busy in the downtown area, particularly late in the evening. That was my comment. Thank you.
Once again, any other comments? Come forward. Give me your name and your address, please.
Just, do you swear do you swear from testimony about to give in tonight's hearing be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Your name and address for the record, spelling your name.
Gina, Gina, Plaitakis, Plaitakis.
Address?
Address 265 Village Road, South Orange, New Jersey. I just wanted to make a comment in favor of approving the variance. I've been a member of Dharma Chakra Buddhist Center for the past 17 years. I'm also a volunteer meditation teacher and have been co-teaching the Tuesday class for the past 7 years with my husband. We take turns as teacher and assistant. The attendance at our classes has always been low, with anywhere from 1 to 10 students. On a really good day, 10 students. Last week we had 1 student. The Monday class has 4 students this evening, and I think they had like 5 students last week. So we haven't even come close to filling the spaces at the St. Stephen's Church parking lot, which has about 12 spaces. I also attend the Sunday morning class, so like Mr. Hall said, we're regular people that come, and I teach the Tuesday, I come on Sunday. It's my husband and I with 1 car. And I just want to say I'm really happy if the center can stay here, because it's a meaningful part of my life as a student and also as a teacher, seeing how meditation has improved the lives for many people that come. And someone had asked about psychology, we're all volunteer teachers. I'm actually a school teacher and a meditation teacher. But there are many psychiatrists that come to our classes, so I don't know if they're coming because they want to learn how to teach meditation to their people that come. But that's all I have to say.
What time is your class taught on Tuesday?
It's from 7 to 8:30.
In the evening. Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Go ahead.
Just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from testimony about to give in tonight's hearing be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Name and address for the record, spelling your name.
Pomerantz, Karen, Pomerantz, Pomerantz. Address 96 Whitney Road, Short Hills. I'm actually here to speak as a township resident. My husband and I have been in the town for over 44 years. We've raised our children here. It's just it's a wonderful place. And I've also worked in the town. I'm a psychologist, and I work with child study teams within the town. I had in the past. And when I found out about the meditation center 12 years ago, I couldn't believe my good fortune, because it's just, our lives are all hectic. And you walk in there and you feel good. It's just quiet and it's peaceful. And it's a wonderful asset to the town. And that's really what I wanted to say, that I'm thrilled about it, hopefully staying here. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Any other comments from the audience? In that case, I will close the public portion of this hearing. Board members, what say you?
So just to remind the board that this is a use variance as presented, and it requires 5 affirmative votes. We can handle if the board decides that the C variances are not subsumed into the D variance. We would handle the D variances. The C variances.
Thoughts?
I'll start. It sounds like a great idea. It is a good use in an area that would have difficulty finding another business, so I'm very comfortable with that. I think the part that's troubling us is, will there be enough parking for the current members, students, teachers, and particularly if it grows? So I would probably be in support of something that put a limit on that and some parameters of how much parking before they'd have to come back to the board to ask for a different situation.
Okay, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the use as well. I think it would be, it is an asset to the community. I do have some concerns about the parking though. But I think the applicant is, has done things to mitigate, some of the concerns that we would have. So I'd be curious to hear what everyone else thinks.
So I'm torn on this too. When you rely on use, the D variance is not a problem, but when you rely on a lease that can be changed at any moment, even within the lease. It's concerning to me. So, that being said, also the hours that this lot is available is very, very restrictive. And, it's not practical. Mr. Keller alluded to, people are not obviously park where they want to park. It's nice that they provide parking, but we all know what everyone goes with path of least resistance when it comes to parking. And that's the prerogative of the person parking the car. There's very little that we can do to mitigate that from a zoning perspective. But it is concerning to me. And I'm not totally sure that this lot with this limited application and also this lease that, like I said, doesn't provide a ton of assurances here. It kind of seals the deal for me, but I'd like to hear from other board members.
So it's clearly a commercial building in a residential zone. And the term of the lease, from what I understood, is a 5-year term with a 5-year option. That makes it essentially a 10-year lease. The term of this parking agreement, to me, it's a 10-year parking lease. I'm not sure.
Well, there's a little bit more to it than that.
Yeah, I'd like to,
So it renews every year, okay, at the prerogative of
the tenant.
the tenant. No, the prerogative also of the landlord.
So
And
maybe I
it
just.
can be terminated at any time.
Okay.
May I interrupt?
Can I have a motion to open the public portion?
Sure. Open, motion to open.
The renewal is at the option of the tenant.
Well, it also states in here that the landlord can also terminate.
Where?
In,
What town?
So you're referring, first of all, to the lease that was submitted as part of the application, correct?
The parking lot lease. The parking lot lease.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Because we have the landlord here, so I'm
So
sure
I
he
missed
doesn't.
that part, because I just see it as a lease that's at the.
But if this is sold, the
The lease runs with the land.
Well,
I,
okay,
Yes.
on that, it's a commercial lease, you can cancel anytime you want.
if the landlord, Dr. Coster, sells the property, this would be null and void.
Not necessarily.
Well,
No, that's not,
there's-
I don't want to get into a lease debate here. This is zoning. It should,
Well, yeah, but it's predicated on you having this in place.
yeah, but the question was that the issue.
It's certainly a relevant inquiry where we're talking about off-site parking on a lot a block and a half away that's also located in an R8 zone where non-residential parking use is not permitted, nor the time that the dentist received their use variance was it contemplated that another user would also be using the parking lot.
So, or I'll ask this as a question. To be protected
For whom?
for the tenant in the case of a mortgage, or because those are other situations where one could lose their lease in a sale, right? It would require this, I believe, would require this tenant to have an SNDA, right? A subordination, to protect it, but for $300
A month, no one's gonna take it.
no one's gonna give you an
Yeah.
SNDA.
Read number 11.
So,
It says Dr. Crosser covenants and represents A, Dr. Crosser is the owner of the property and has the right and authority to enter into and execute and deliver this agreement. B, there are no other parking lot agreements presently in force granting any other third party a right to use the parking lot.
Year two, Dr. Crosser is no longer the owner of the property.
I'm sorry?
In year two, let's say Dr. Crosser is no longer the owner of the property.
The lease is tied to the real estate.
So
No.
I guess my point is, this is for what this is.
Mr. Chairman, for example, if,
A $3,600 a year lease, you're
if-
telling me, is going to somehow lock them in to a subsequent owner?
It actually says the parties here too, so wouldn't it be these people, the parties?
The
The
subsequent
parties
owner would
specifically
have the
in this
right
contract.
to decide whether they want
To engage.
to engage or not, but that's the best you're
And-
gonna
and-
get from this.
Mr. Chairman, let's just assume you're correct. The applicant comes before the board. There's been a change of there's been a modification in the lease of the parking lot.
Yeah, but
Parking
we
lot
don't know
lease.
that. We don't know that. I mean, no one knows anything. I mean, let's be honest. No one enforces it. I mean, you heard it right here, and your own professional said it. Who enforces it? A noisy neighbor. The town's not driving by and seeing what's going on.
But you know, Mr. Chairman, you're not the enforcement agency, and that doesn't, you heard of the representative. Do you think they're going to try to pull a fast one? Come on.
I don't have any
Please.
reason to believe that they pull a fast one. I have no reason to believe they won't. So, any other questions, please?
Not questions, but I'm gonna finish my.
Then I'll close the public portion of the hearing.
From my perspective, it's a commercial building in a residential zone. It's a 5-year lease with a 5-year option. It's a 10-year lease. This lease, to your point, could be termed, but it's the best lease you're going to get for what this is, I believe. And it's a 10-year lease at the tenant's option. So I also don't believe that it's a very heavy use. And based on what, the conversation we had about square footage per, spaces per square footage, were this not zoned residential, at 150 square feet per space, it's basically what's in the lot now. I think it's 11, maybe 12, right? And if it were the alternate calculation that Mr. Keller gave, it's probably 17 spaces, I think, maybe 18. Here. I think the space is like 1,700 square feet. Did I just calculate that at 100 and whatever? 1,900, okay, so 19 spaces, like that. I don't think this is a big deal. I don't think it's a heavy use. I think there's probably adequate parking to cover most of the use that happens in this space, and it's not used very frequently. I take the concern, what happens if this lease, if something happens to Dr. Crosser, or if he makes some change with his property, and maybe there needs to be some thought or protection against that, or they need to come back before us, or whatever that is. But otherwise, I don't really see the issue with this.
Let me ask you one quick thing since on that. We have a Tuesday night class.
Yes.
We have no parking. What do we do?
So I guess the point is, you're saying if they hold class when they don't have additional parking. I mean, they say they'll self-regulate, and we say we don't know, right? That's your point. I don't know, I don't even think they're gonna use the 12 spaces on a Tuesday night.
Right, I mean, I think ultimately that's the question, really. What is the harm going to be? I think if, the bigger concern may be that there's growth in this organization. But I agree with Amy's comments. I think, I'm not sure how we're ever going to get anything in that space. Maybe it has to be vacant. But I don't know how we're gonna get anything in that space if, we can't rely on this kind of agreement. So I think, given the nature of the organization and the history with the number of people who use the facility, if some people park on Main Street on a Tuesday night at 7:00, I don't think there's going to be that's going to be a real challenge for the town or people who also want to park downtown. So I think that I certainly don't have any issue with the D variance, but I just think I'm not sure how we're ever going to get anything in this space, and it seems to me that this is the kind of use that I think is positive for the town, and so I would support it.
And I would echo Amy and Greg's comments. I think this seems to be a light use facility, And to your question, Craig, about, on a Tuesday night, if you lose the parking from the doctors, parking lot agreement, there are 27 spots, if I heard correctly, on either side of Main Street. And on a weeknight, I don't see, from what I've heard, that there would be as much usage. There would be enough parking spaces around Main Street and a lot of parallel streets which are there, which I don't think that should inundate parking as such. So from that perspective, where this lot has been, this property has been vacant for 3+ years, I think it might be a good use. And just generally the positive comments that people are talking about in town, this might be a good use from my perspective.
Can I just kind of, to help the board, a couple things. First of all, I think the board did hear testimony, I believe, that there was efforts to try to market this property as what it was, namely an office use or maybe professional office use, and that was unsuccessful. And that was what I was going to in terms of the parking ratios, because obviously in the prior resolution that was made part of the record, that they only needed variance for one parking space because of the nature of the use. But the testimony that was presented is that there were efforts to try to find another office use and they wouldn't be able to find it. So therefore you have this more stringent parking ratio. That's number one. Number two, I have been involved in applications where the board is similarly concerned, for good reason, with the adequacy of parking and the proposal by the applicant to utilize an off-site space. Usually if those applications that are approved include various conditions and make the board comfortable based on comments not dissimilar to those we're hearing tonight. One of those is that every year the applicant has an obligation to maintain their certificate of occupancy, to file with the zoning officer a representation that the lease remains in effect for that following year, number one. And number two, that the applicant agrees to fully comply with the restrictions in that lease regarding when they can operate and when they can't operate vis-a-vis the off-site parking space. So requiring the applicant to affirmatively every year sort of recertify their use to the appropriate municipal official is a little bit, at least in those cases, and it's really up to the board ultimately, belt and suspenders to address, maybe, it's up to the board, some of the issues that are being
Yeah,
raised.
usage is hard to curtail because
Correct.
there's effectively no parking on a Tuesday or Thursday.
100%.
You can't say you can't operate on Tuesday or Thursday.
Well, no, that's what, I've had cases
Yeah.
where, look, this is your representation to this board that you're only operating during the week on Monday and Wednesday. That is it. You're only allowed to operate Monday and Wednesday. That's a condition of approval. And those types of conditions have been upheld by the courts if the board wanted to go that direction.
Well, I mean, on a Tuesday, they do have a certain number of spaces, right? They can operate, they just can't operate beyond capacity, potentially.
Can I add one thing?
Sure.
Just instructional schools and studios only came into the ordinance about 2 years ago. When Learning RX went to the board, we didn't have instructional schools and studios. So as part of site plan, when it came to the board, what kind of parking should we use? So they went with general office. It was just, but by today's standards, Learning RX would have been considered an instructional school and studio, which would have generated the same parking that's required of this use. Just we didn't have it at the time. So that's what they used.
So for
An
me,
office is still a 1 per 200,
Correct.
250.
250, yeah, 250. Each is 200.
So for me, I'm not worried about the Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm worried about the events on Saturday night that have 25 people, possibly more for the big events, which are every other. And those are the disruptive events that I think could exceed the parking that is available to them. And I wonder if we could come up with a condition to not impact the neighborhood and then make it a way.
Yeah, I don't think their testimony was for Saturday night. I think it was Saturday.
Day?
10 to 3. There were a couple times a year.
Okay,
and
Saturday
then-
day then.
Or maybe a Sunday for the instruction.
All right, Saturday day then, but I guess the same principle applies rather to parking capacity. Saturday. There's 25 people. You can reasonably say there could be 25 cars, there could be 10. It's hard to say. So you can make a condition for the capacity.
It's
for
hard to
25.
enforce that.
Right. All of our conditions are hard to.
Yeah.
By nature.
So, I mean, is there, a motion or, I think we're gonna split this up into the D separate. So we're gonna do the D variance first and then we'll follow with the Cs. So,
Okay, and that because of the unique circumstances here, namely the fact that the applicant is relying on off-site parking to satisfy their parking need and parking requirement, that my legal advice would be is that the parking is not subsumed into the D variance. It
Correct.
should be done
Correct.
separately.
right, so yeah, D will be separate, the use variance will be separate of that, and any conditions that we move forward on C will be listed separately. So in that case, is there a motion on the D variance in terms of the use?
I'll make a motion to approve this application as a use variance.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Joseph Caulfield,
Yes.
Chandra Harjani.
Yes.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Virginia Truitt.
Yes.
Jessica Glett.
Yes.
Craig Plattner.
Yes. In regards to the C variances, upon recommendation by council, I think it would be smart to include that the lease is verified every year and in good effect. And limit any other recommendations from the board.
If there's any change in ownership, so.
Yeah, I mean, anything in regards to the litigation of the lease, it must be in good standing annually, or if at any point if they lose it, there must be a notification to the township as part of the resolution.
Can we specify that it goes to notification to the zoning officer?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Right under the
that's
bus.
really happy.
that's technically who has to get it.
Just want to make sure it goes there.
Do we have to consent?
I'll be minimally.
So including that, that condition, is there a motion?
So motion to approve the application for C variances with Craig's condition.
Go a second.
And obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, the conditions would also include, per the testimony and representation, compliance with any professional reports from the township professionals, including Ms. Callahan and Graham also.
Right, Graham, that's
Had
how,
a planning
correct,
as well.
regarding landscaping and such.
Yes.
That were recommended. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Joseph Caulfield,
Yes.
Chandra Harjani.
Yes.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Virginia Truitt.
Yes.
Jessica Glett.
Yes.
Craig Plattner.
Yes. Good luck with the project.
Thank you very much.
She got. That's right, like your dog. I'll tell your dog.
Next up, we have calendar 396524. 184 Weatherbridge Road, blank.
Okay.
You swear or affirm the testimony about to give us tonight's hearing to be the truth, whole truth, and about the truth?
Yes.
Just state your name for the record.
Christine Macedo, Miseo.
This is one.
The birth certificate says that, yeah. Long story, one of these years, when you retire.
She's sworn.
Sworn, okay. Ms. Becerra, how are you tonight?
Pardon?
How are you tonight?
I'm fine, thank
Super.
you.
Why don't you give us your qualifications for the board and move forward from there.
I'm a licensed architect and planner in the state of New Jersey. I have been licensed architect for almost 40 years, but I think only about 33 years in New Jersey because I did come from Illinois. My practice is at 211 Washington Corner Road. I just recently sold my building in East Hanover. And I have been before this board before, and I've been before many boards and sat on the planning board in Livingston. I don't know what else you need.
Your license is in good standing, correct?
Fees are paid.
Excellent. Your qualifications are accepted.
You're gonna, I'm sorry, last name is,
Miseo, Miseo.
and you're providing testimony as a
As
licensed
an
architect
architect.
and a professional planner?
I don't know if this so much needs some planning, but yeah, as little planning as it needs.
Okay, thank you.
We're here today, and I understand you all have the exact same drawings. We have a situation where we have a garage in front of the house, and it is a hip roof garage. Right now, it's existing non-conforming at 14.67 feet. If it stays exactly the way it is, what is required would be 15 feet, so it's just a hair under. But the owners would like to take the hip roof off and make it a walkable deck. And because it's a second floor, we need 22 feet for our side yard setback. And we are here today for that variance. We are lowering the roof itself, which on these pictures, just the way it's coming up on the angle, does not really show quite as tall as it is when you drive by on the street. And we're also lowering the garage walls a bit, just because right now, this is a little bit above the second floor. And what we need to do is we need to be able to walk out onto that deck. So not only are we taking the roof down, but we are also lowering the walls, minimal, about 8 inches, just to be able to get a slight step down to be able to make that work. I feel that because we're lessening the mass of the garage, that I don't believe it would be a detriment to the neighborhood. If you were at all able to drive by on White Oak Ridge Road, you probably missed it because there are so many trees around. This whole area are trees that go almost all the way to the street, and this is the front left side. So the neighbor that would be impacted the most doesn't even see the garage. You can't even see the other house. And there's a whole line of bushes here. And the only reason I know you probably missed the house if you did drive by, because I miss it. Every once in a while, I'd have to turn around in the church and come back the half a block. I think that this would not be detrimental to the neighborhood, and I don't think it impacts the intent of the zoning ordinance or the zoning plan.
So if I was to stand on that deck in the front yard, I'd stand probably 12, 13 feet off the ground.
Oh, no, this is a 7-foot door.
Right, and I'm 6 feet tall.
Oh, your head. Oh, yes, I thought you meant your feet.
Having people up there in the front yard standing on top of a roof with their heads 13 feet above the ground, how's that beneficial to the zoning plan and master plan?
I don't think it's detrimental at all to the zoning plan. Because as I told my owners, as they're going through this process, They're gonna be on that roof 3 times. That's
So
gonna
why
be
do
about
it?
the,
So why do it?
because they want it, because they want it. I don't believe it's
So
gonna
I'm
get
trying to
used
find a
very
hardship
much.
here. I'm trying to find.
There is no hardship.
Right.
It's a C2. There is
Right,
no
and I'm
hardship.
trying to also find from that C2 perspective, how this is beneficial
I mean,
to zoning
the
plan and master
only-
plan.
the only thing, no,
So I
didn't say it
I'm really
was-
struggling with proofs here. is the
Okay.
problem.
the only thing I can say is that we are a narrow lot. So we can use the hardship of the width of the lot. That the lot is only 80 feet. And where this zone requires 100 feet. If I had that extra 20 feet, I wouldn't be here.
Well, you would, because you're still deficient on one side, you would be 22 feet off. I mean, you would have it all on one side.
Yeah, but
Best
if you
can
had it
do.
half and half and I'm 20 feet, I'm 10, then I'm 26 on one and 27 on the other. So, but one proof could be that it could be hardship, that the lot is an undersized width lot. And that's why we're here.
You put furniture up there? She's gonna stand up there.
No.
So just gonna
So,
stand.
so what is the?
Yeah, like, what is
I
the
think
purpose
it's a
of the deck?
visual thing. We're remodeling the house right now on the interior. And my client
I struggle with
finds
what's visual about
pictures.
standing on a roof.
No, I think the look of the house, to not have this hip roof here.
So
and
it's
I
better to have a
think-
flat roof?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
So it's better to have a flat roof than a hip roof?
Well, my client finds pictures and she feels that that's visually appealing, to have the flat roof versus the pitched roof. If you take a look at, so what they would like to do is something like this. So
What about, where's the access to?
it would be through this bedroom right behind. If you take a look at the next page, and sorry to interrupt.
Wait, you're not sworn.
You're not sworn in,
Sorry.
so.
It would be through the second floor bedroom on the left.
Got a slider,
Pardon?
got a sliding door there.
Yes, a sliding door, sliding door.
So I'm just trying to, is this merely decorative? Or is it gonna be used, is that space above the garage gonna be used for
I think it's gonna be, no, there's gonna
deck
be,
chairs, for twister games?
I think it's gonna be rarely used. It's not intended to be used as barbecue or anything like that. I believe it's more decorative, but it is something that they requested.
What is the depth of the entire balcony? From the, where the
It's
access point
22,
is?
on page A2, it's listed. It's 23 feet long by 1910 wide.
So it could be used for recreational purposes, even though they don't, it's not just decorative. I mean, there's enough space that
I'm
could
asking
be.
what they intend.
Right.
Yes,
But the
there's
potential
only
exists.
3 people in the family.
But the potential exists that they could use it for functional reasons, if
No, but whatever
desired.
the intent, it can be used for whatever,
Okay.
you know, it doesn't matter what's intended.
But
Just
like I said,
asking
it's
what their
a
intent is.
it's a space that
Well,
isn't really.
She testified that it was decorative, so I wanted to clarify that's a big space for decorations.
Well, either you do the whole garage or not. You can't put half the roof on the garage. And
But there is, my question, or perhaps my comment asking for confirmation, there is space that it could be used for function rather than
Yes.
just a decoration.
yes.
Thank you.
Possibly my client could be sworn in and you can make your case.
So Mr. Oakley, if it is for decorative purpose, why do we need to go out on it?
If it's just for decoration.
Right, why do you need to physically stand on top of the roof?
I think,
Come on forward, let's swear you in.
yeah.
Whoever wants to talk is gonna have to get sworn in, so if everyone wants to talk, we'll swear you all in, it's not a problem.
Just raise your hand. Do you swear from
Okay.
testimony you're
My
about to
name
give
is-
tonight? From tonight's hearing, be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth? Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in tonight's hearing to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Your name for the record.
Millie, Millie, last name Huang.
And your address. Your address.
Address, 512 Wyoming Avenue. Milburn.
Please proceed.
Okay, actually, the deck itself is approved by zoning and building. What wasn't approved was the railing, because we wanna, so we are required to have 8 feet in for the railing. So the deck itself is approved already.
Well, it's non-conforming as it currently is. Your side yard setbacks are non-conforming.
Correct.
And by
That's
putting
for
a
the
second
railing.
floor, by using the second floor to have habitation, you'd have to be 22 feet off the side. So you're not conforming. Currently, you'd have to get a variance,
Right,
but it's non-conforming.
it's non-conforming.
But now you're exacerbating the condition. Forgetting the railing, because you have a roof up there now, you're not going higher than that anyway, so it's not really, it's not height, it's setback.
Well, because that gives more natural light and
What gives more natural light?
The flat roof.
the flat roof. Yeah, it gives more natural light and yeah, and my daughter, she always wanted to, you know, that's what she wanted to have one, like a walkout balcony, like. And I think it make, like aesthetically, the railing, even with the house, it looks better in design.
Okay. Anything further?
You wanna say something?
What use are you gonna use it for?
We're not gonna use it that much, just for her to, you know, when, maybe after some study, she can take a fresh breathe on the balcony, you know, relax a little bit and.
That could be done in the backyard outside, or, I mean, right.
Well, I think like, you know, if they sing, you can see the sunset and, you know, it looks good, like. I don't know what's a better way to get better light for the natural light for this room. And this happened to be her room.
Well, I'm not the architect, you hired the architect right there, I'm sure there's a way with her experience, you can find some light, but.
Well,
Maybe you could look at
the side of the
sheet 2
roof.
and show where the roof comes, you have it dotted, I think, on your
Right.
plans, so show that.
This is where it comes now. The most we'd be able to do is squeeze a small window here and a small window here. This is the north side. So by having this open, you've got west window, which is a lot nicer than north side window. Right now, there's nothing there.
Any questions for Ms. Macedo? Anything further?
No.
Then I'll go to public portion.
I will start.
Go ahead.
I've been driving by this house for 24 years, maybe 6 or 7 times, the way it exists now. I have no problem with what you want to do there, because what exists there now is an eyesore. Nothing personal, please. Nothing personal.
Well, they just bought
But I
it.
know the
You
people
want-
you bought it from, and they're lovely people, don't get me wrong, but that box situation, that's why I wanted you to draw our attention to the fact that if you look at the dashed lines where the garage is now, you can't get windows into that building there. So that's gonna open up the building there for light for that side. As far as the deck usage, if your daughter wants to sit out and watch my car drive by on White Oak Ridge Road
Can
at
wait.
6 in the morning, 6 at night every night, that's fine. I don't see much of a draw to be there, actually, but that being said, we do get great sunsets that part of town. But I've been looking at that garage there, obviously, I believe it was an afterthought that it was placed on that building. Actually outside the 200-foot notice, so I can talk about this, but I think that the fact that you have a trellis situation there or a railing, that's gonna give it a little bit of a character versus what, if you look at sheets, your first sheet, the picture there,
It's pretty
don't do
ugly.
it justice how not so good looking it is. If you look at the front right elevation, everybody, it's a mess. Sorry.
It is, it's not very attractive. We're trying to make it
And I think,
attractive.
that's what I see what you're doing there, and I think there's not much you can do with it. I don't think you want to lose the garage, obviously, nobody does, but I think there's something to this. Would I like to have it scaled back a deck? Do I think we should throw a party out there? No, I don't think you would anyway, but that being said, I think it's a big improvement than what's there, so thank you for your patience, everyone.
So, my concern is not with, wanting to get more light and being able to put windows into that room. My concern is that we're gonna have a big deck out there. And as lovely as the applicants, may be, and as like well-intentioned as they may be, to not have parties out there, not have big gatherings and barbecues and stuff out there. We all know on the zoning board that the variance, runs with the house, so future owners, could, use it for different purposes. So, I would ideally love to see something where the applicants can get the light that they want and, get kind of this part fixed in the front without it, being a big deck in the front of a house. I don't see a reason for that. I'm worried it's gonna be detrimental to the neighborhood. That's really, what I worry about.
I echo what you're saying. I would say the same, that I think it's fine to have light and a low or flat roof on your garage if that helps with the light for the bedroom, but I don't see why it needs to be a deck. And it does run with the land and it can't be controlled by, even if your intention is we barely go on it, you don't know what the next person's gonna do, and I don't see why it needs to be a deck.
I will echo what I heard so far from this board, the exclusion of Joe. So I'm suffering with the proofs. I just don't see where any of the proofs have been met other than saying I want, and it'd be cool to have. And unfortunately, those are not part of the negative or positive criteria proving C2 variance. So, I too also am very concerned about this deck and what it would do in subsequent years. And I have a 16-year-old and he weaponized that thing. So, that being said, I really suffer with, how it even complies with this, how it would be beneficial to the zoning plan and master plan in 2 years to come. So.
Yeah, look, I agree with those comments. I think it's unfortunate in a way that garage is so front and center. Like if there were parties or things happening out on that deck, it's not, it's not like it's happening in the backyard or the side yard, or it's really front and center. And I just have to think there's some kind of solution from an architectural perspective that would get you more light in there, but wouldn't, necessarily create a deck. But I'm not an architect, but it seems like there could be a solution to this that would at least address that issue. It might not solve the want for the deck, but as Craig says, I'm not sure that really would meet the criteria for getting the variance. But I just think there should be some kind of alternative that could be developed.
Any other comments?
I agree with everyone except for Joe. It does look like it's okay, but most of what he says is brilliant. But anyway, it does look like the garage is just stuck on. I did find the house right away because there's the tree line and then it stops and you've got this big front facing garage. So while I sympathize with the desire to have a balcony off of your room, which would be really cool as a young girl, I can totally see that. And I'm not an architect, but perhaps a skylight is something you might think of to get a lot of light in, and maybe a balcony on the back. But all I thought of is like, oh my goodness, that's going to be a big deck facing the neighbors and facing White Oak Ridge, and people across from you are going to see that, even if you're not partiers. Somebody subsequently could be, or maybe you will change into partiers at some point. So I would not support this application as it stands.
So just to interject for a second, we've heard comments from the board members. Do you want to talk to your client about addressing the comments of the board members, not necessarily tonight, but maybe coming back with an alternate design?
Yeah, why, is it possible to carry this to next month?
Not next meeting.
Yeah,
Or
whatever
next
next
meeting.
available is, we'll see when that is, real quick.
What day is today? Oh, March
Fourth.
18th. Probably the soonest I could do it. This is my budget.
Okay. One thing
They're
to,
going away.
well, no, not until May. The only thing I'm gonna say is the next application is gonna need a lot of time.
This one,
Yeah,
the one that's next tonight.
yeah,
So what are you trying to say? We're not gonna get through it?
yeah.
Yeah, that's the case.
Carry both of them. So
We have
this
to
will
still
give
do a
us
closed
Do you-
session.
What's that?
We still have to do a closed session.
Well, it's fine,
No,
we're in
that's-
closed session, but
Do you don't want them to start the last one?
I know there's gonna be a lot of questions.
I'm gonna try to-
Can we make some comment?
not at this point, no. You had your chance to do that. So at this point, you're gonna have to come back with a revised plan.
That's what we're saying, we're coming back, it isn't over.
April first, I have
Okay.
Lucky Express on April first.
The Lucky Express.
Lucky Express.
What else?
Or Garbayo on Sagamore, that's the one that,
That's the,
Playground thing?
yeah.
yeah, the walls.
And then I have a new one, 35 Milton, and possibly one from White Oak, might not go.
I would put that night. Those two applications, just
Lucky
between
Express.
Lucky Express and the walls. That's a tough application too.
April 15th, I have just two applications on, so you could carry.
So you would carry both of them to April 15th?
Yeah,
All
because
right.
I know there's gonna be a lot of questions and we won't be out of here till 11 o'clock. I mean, do you care?
I'm, you know, like I said, they pay us the big bucks, so, you know, we're here, so.
I know.
But no, it's fine. You know what's fine. No. So like I said, I'm hoping you adjust this so we can move through.
Oh, this will be quick this will be 5
Right.
minutes next meeting.
And then you'll have that, so.
And then I'll have a decent amount of time to be able
Right, so like I
to.
said, you know, the ball's in your court on this one, and then obviously we can address the next application that's in
April
there.
15th is fine. And I am here April 6th, my flight leaves April 7th. Yeah, but my flight leaves at 6 o'clock in the evening, so I could back in the
All right,
morning.
we'll shoot.
All right, so we're April 15th.
Yes.
So, for those, and for the viewer at home, calendar 396524, which is the current one, 184 White Oak Ridge Road, along with calendar 394623, 2 Winding Way. Those two will be carried until April 15th. No further notice. Any other changes will be on the website and listed at Town Hall. So with that, I will move to adjourn. We do have a special session to follow,
Yeah, so
so.
we have to.
Can I have a motion?
Yeah,
Yeah, can I have a motion to adjourn?
No,
Motion to.
no.
No, not this meeting, you don't, we're able.
Motion to go into closed
Okay.
session.
Right.
And then we'll turn off the TV.
Right, all right, can I have a motion to go into closed session, please?
Motion to go into closed session.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
I'm not here for that, right? I don't stay for closure. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Back on, just to adjourn.
And then we need a motion to adjourn.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Have a good evening.
Thank you.
So it's adjourned.